Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of our photography review show. I hope you had a good couple of weeks. I hope you took your camera out, and I hope you're ready for more photography fun. If you've never been here before, my name is Jakub, and I'm a professional photographer based in West Sussex, England, down the south. Now, if you've never seen this show, what we do here, we review your photos, we look at them, we look at three things. We look at each of the photo and we look at the technical part of the image, looking at your camera settings, looking at things like exposure, sharpness, and so on. Then we look at the artistic part of the image. This is where we look at the things like composition, main subject, and so on there. So really kind of main subject, the storytelling, and everything to do with that. And if I feel that there is maybe something that we could that I could tell you about your photo editing, maybe give you some tips and tricks. Then at the end, for each photo, I try to give you some tips on what you could do with your images. So that's what we do. Now, we've been doing this show for over a year now. And if you want to join us for the next episode of this show, all you need to do is to join our Clever Photographer Plus membership. To do that, you head to our website, cleverphotographer.com. There you look on the top for membership, and there for a little fee you will first of all get a huge bundle of digital tools, including presets for Lightroom and Luminar, textures, overlays, skies, LUTs, and so much more. So you should definitely check that. Each month has a theme. So for example, this month in May, it's a forest and woodland photography theme. So all of these about 300 digital assets are themed around certain theme, just like woodland and forest now. Now, on the top of that, you will get access to our Clever Photographer Academy and also access to this photography review show where I review your photos. Now, before we're going to start, since we're still waiting for people, we had a little break now for about 2 weeks. And during the 2 weeks, I went to beautiful island of Madeira. For those who maybe don't know, it's a Portuguese island. When we just kind of quickly look at Europe, just to give you an idea, right here, Madeira is actually down here. It's a little island with maybe just around 200,000 people living there. The main capital of the island is called Funchal, with about 100,000 people. It's very well known for beautiful coast. There is a cable car there in Funchal, which will take you on the top of the hill, and then you can kind of slide down. Most people come to Madeira or Funchal with a cruise ship. However, you can fly there with direct flights from all over Europe, UK, or Portugal, and so on. So I spent there 6 days with other photographers, and I captured some beautiful images. I was really impressed by the island. Lots of beautiful skiscape opportunities, and also lots of beautiful views from some of the beautiful mountains. So if I quickly jump on my Instagram just to show you some examples of the capturing there. This was one of the pictures from early of my stay. This is the Ribeira da Janela. It's on the northwest of the island. It takes about 1.5 hour drive from the capital. However, it's probably one of the most beautiful seascape monument or spot for photography on the island. We went there for a sunrise, woke up around 4:30 in the morning, and this was the result there. I took my camera really low, used some ND filters, and end up with this beautiful result. Similarly, the next day in the evening, we climb on the top of the Pico De Arero, which is really stunning. You can walk through all of these paths. One of the really famous view there is this very narrow steps. However, I stayed here on the top of one of these rocks and took this picture. You can see the clouds being really high. The sky really looked like this with lots of beautiful colors and the sun just hiding behind the horizon. So that was beautiful sunset in Madeira there. And just to kind of finish it off the next day, just to show you an example of where really the patience is the key for landscape photography. This is a spot on northeast of the island. It's called Ponte or Ponta de São Lourenço. Of course, I never really know how to exactly pronounce it in Portuguese. However, north east of the island. There is this beautiful view like this. We have again arrived there around 5:30 in the morning. All 25 of us set our tripods, and we have waited. The sun never really came out because it was hiding behind the horizon where there was this very thick amount of clouds. So there was nothing happening. As the time went on, around 8, most of the photographers gave up, started to walk around, started to be interested with other things. But from my experience from Scotland and similar parts of the world, I know that sometimes you can be lucky even later on during the morning. So I really kind of just stick to the spot, waited. And even though the sunrise was around 7:30, this is a view around 9 o'clock, 9:15, I think. And you can see that the sun already went up and it passed through the kind of thick layer of the clouds at the horizon. However, as it went up, it kind of for a moment hid behind this cloud and created this beautiful light. And I absolutely love the result. So sometimes really the patience is a key. Lots of people start to get distracted as soon as the sun comes out. It's always worth it to wait another half an hour or hour to get a result like this. So this was a great place as well. And this was actually from a similar spot just behind it. So as soon as the sun kind of disappeared behind the clouds there, I just climbed on the other side and took another picture there. So if you've never been around or if you've never been into Madeira, definitely 100% recommend it. It's beautiful. You can get beautiful seascapes images there. Funchal as a capital is also great for a little bit of street photography, so I highly recommend it. Well, that's it for my trip. Just to let you know, for the next 4 or 5 weeks, I'll be here every Monday now. I have no trips planned until June, where I'm going to be heading to Provence. So for the moment, for the next 5 weeks, every Monday we will be meeting here on YouTube, Facebook, or Facebook Academy for the photography review show. So you can definitely go ahead and send us your images. If you already are a member, you can find the dates already on the membership page. And if you are not, then once again, make sure you head to our website, cleverphotographer.com, and find out more there. Now, this is all out of the way. We can jump into Luminar Neo, and we're going to start with the reviewing. Starting from the top with Zdeněk. Once again, we're going to go through the edits. We're going to be looking at the technical part of the image. We're going to be looking at the artistic part, and then some of the photo editing. So let me just zoom in right here to make sure that you see as much as possible. And let's just quickly look at some of the comments before we going to continue. Zdeněk, good evening to you too. Thank you so much for sending us something a little bit different. It's very, very exciting. By the way, as far as I know, it's Zdeněk's birthday today. So Zdeněk, if I'm right, and following the Facebook, happy birthday to you. All the best. I hope you're going to have a great day, or you already had a great day. You stay safe, and most importantly, make sure that you keep shooting more images and send them over to us. So happy birthday to Zdeněk. Thank you so much for sending us these pictures. Moving on, what else we have? Khan, I'm sorry, maybe you're in the wrong chat. Boho Photo, thank you so much for joining us. And Zdeněk, you are very welcome. So let's jump straight into it. Zdeněk, what do we have? 2 images of food here, both with a white background. Very interesting. Trying something else. It's always great. Starting, for example, with this one, looking at the camera settings. So Canon M6 with a 15 to 45 millimeters lens. Now we are on 100 ISO, 23 millimeters, f11, and 1/30th of a second. So looking at the settings, first of all, ISO spot on 100, making sure that we don't add any noise. 23 millimeters is actually quite good number to use for this type of photography, making sure that things don't get too distorted there. F11, looking at the image, that really helps us. I can see that everything is nicely in the focus, which is really nice. And 1/30th of a second, just make sure that the exposure and everything is right. Now, talking about this kind of photography, which I would assume would be something like a portrait product photography or food photography for maybe like a book. That's what this type of photography would probably be for. And actually, I think it's quite nice. It's nicely done. It's clean. First of all, I really like the light. I think it's very nicely diffused all across. Everything is nicely done. There is a little bit of shadow there, which I actually think adds to help to add a little bit of depth to the whole story. It's nicely done. The crop and the framing is quite nicely done too. Again, the white background, which is not always easy, is nicely done as well. So when it comes to that, I think technically, I think it's nicely done. I don't think there is anything necessarily wrong with that. Sharpness is there, all of that. So well done there. Now, moving on the artistic part, talking about food photography in general. I think as a test shot for something to try, obviously this works. I think the technique is spot on. Now, from my experience, I used to work for Trivago and TripAdvisor doing some food photography. You would probably, if you would do this for money, you would want to spend a little bit more time on little details, things like maybe slicing the onion a little bit more clean, getting reduce of some of the peels here, maybe play around with some of the items a little bit more. That would be my suggestion here, but that doesn't really mean that it's wrong. It's again, this kind of picture also has a bigger meaning when it's maybe together with certain text or certain theme. Then you kind of understand what is it exactly we are looking at, because right now it's just an onion sliced with some chili peppers. So I think to judge it more on the artistic part, more of the storytelling and so on, we would need to know more about what the picture is going to be used for. But I think technically it's really nicely done. Which will bring us to the next picture, where we looking at the same camera, same lens. So again, the Canon M6, 15 to 45 millimeters, ISO 100, again, spot on there, 20 millimeters, going a little bit wider here, f10, and 1/30th of a second. Now, I'm assuming that you were a little bit closer because we get a little stronger depth of field here. We have most of the front part in focus, and then some of the background starting to be a little bit soft. I have to say, personally, I prefer this compared to being everything is focused, but that again has very much, that will depend on what the shot is for. So it's just more personal opinion, I think. But I think technically it's quite nicely done. Again, the sharpness on the main parts is there. It's very clean, the board, except few parts. Again, I think that goes more for the artistic part. I would probably prefer the board to be clean completely. When it comes to the rest of the technical part, it's well done. The light is really nice. The reflection is nicely handled. The details are nicely done. And all of that, I think, works really well. So coming back to the artistic part, I think first, I think you're a little bit too tight at the bottom. Again, kind of talking about keeping an eye on edges. I think with the knife, you can clearly see that that was a intention as a photographer, where here, I think you are just a little bit close to the edge. That would be one thing. Second thing for me, for if it would be a product photography or photo for a book, I would really take my time and make sure that the board is even cleaner, that it really looks all same across. You know, use some towels, make sure you dry the food or the sliced food and just place it there to make sure that you don't kind of dirt the board. So that would be about it. The rest of it is really cool. So to be honest, Zdeněk, I don't really have much I can tell you when it comes to post-processing because it's done really nicely. You know, it's a little bit flat in a way of, well, it's a product picture or food picture. So you're not really going to start to add some glow to it and extra details and so on, because it's supposed to look natural. It's supposed to look realistic, I think. So that is actually really nicely done, and I really like it. So altogether, Zdeněk, I admire the effort. I think well done for trying something different. Technically, I don't think I need to tell you anything. I think the lighting is great. I think the technical part is great. It's more about what the pictures should be for, and then maybe working on some of the details, like maybe making sure the board is clean, and maybe taking extra time to slice the onion, remove some of the parts which you don't want to be there, and so on. To be honest, from my experience, when I started with these type of shots, I really kind of went around like a stock websites And I didn't buy there anything, but I look at other examples, and that really helped me a lot to get inspired on the beginning. And once you do your first 10, 15, 20, 30 shots similar to this, not copying, but getting inspired by others, you will create your own style and end up with something interesting. So that's about it for Zdeněk. Thank you again. And we're gonna move to next photographer. Caroline, 2 landscape images this week, so let's have a look at them. The first one has no camera data, which is a little bit of a shame, but let's jump to it. So, Caroline, starting with the first one, I'm assuming it's a longer exposure. You can see the water is a little bit smooth and hazy. That's nicely done. There is some background with a little bit of sky. So let's just zoom in and see. I think the sharpness is actually really decent. One thing I see as soon as I zoom in is the camera spots. You can see one here, one here. That's something that can be really easily removed in applications like Lightroom, or here in Luminar Neo, you actually can do that with one button. So what you do is you just quickly jump in an edit module. Here there is a tool called Erase Tool, and at the bottom there is a button called Remove Dust Spots. All you need to do is to click on it. It takes a few seconds, it scans the image, and it actually removes these spots for you. So when I look there and I have a look at the before and after, I'm not sure if you can see it 100%, so I will zoom further. Have a look. Before, they are right here, before and after. So really 1 second thing, you just run it through and it's done. Well, while we're here, let's continue looking at the image. So dust spots, one thing to keep an eye on, but otherwise it's nicely done. I really like the texture in the sky with a little bit of clouds. That's nice. It's kind of interesting light. However, what I think is more important in this case is to look at the artistic part, the composition. And this is where I think you need to kind of maybe look for different crop or just find a different space. What I'm missing here basically is a foreground. There is lots of similar texture at the foreground, which doesn't really tell you any story. And then, so you start by looking at the image. At this part, there's nothing. And then there is lots happening at the back. However, it's already really small. It's not big, and it kind of disappears on the image. So what I would do here, I would probably crop it a little bit differently. Maybe go for the 16 or 9, and definitely crop it maybe to at least something like this. So then you get less water, you have more focus on the mountain, you have more of the sky, and that's where it would take you. So for the composition, I think I would try to bring more of the land just to kind of get more interesting aspects into the image. Now, what else you could do? I think whilst we're here in the edit module, I would keep an eye on the white balance. I think it's a little bit too yellow for me. That can be done with a simple white balance tool. Maybe just bringing the temperature down a little bit, and maybe just adding a little bit more tint. That's one thing. I would probably also add a little bit more contrast to the overall image, and maybe just a little bit more structure or clarity just to make it more interesting. Maybe it needs to be done locally, but let's just check it out. Yeah, I think something like this actually help in overall. And finally, to finish it off, maybe with a little bit of vignette, it will kind of help to the overall image. Let's have a look. This maybe, and then we have something from here to here. So this is what I would do with this image, just to give you an idea. But to make sure that we keep going, we're gonna move to the next picture, Caroline. So looking at the second image, here we have the camera details. This is Canon 5D Mark IV with the 24 to 70 millimeters. Now, from the camera settings, we are on ISO 100, 39 millimeters, f11, 1/125th of a second. Now, ISO 100, spot on there, making sure that we stay away from any additional digital noise. So that's all good. 39 millimeters is a great number for landscape photography. Make making sure we don't distort things. F11, again, making sure we have the details all the way through, which we have from the foreground all the way to background. And 1/125th of a second is a good number, probably to keep sure and make sure that the white balance works well. So lovely photo. And this is why it works much better than the first one. And the reason is that we have a foreground here. We have something to start the story from. We have the stones, we have a texture, and it's a great building stones to then take our viewer all the way through the image. Sorry. So that's a great thing for there. After that, what I would do, I would again probably crop it a little bit differently. So we can again take the image into edit module. Here, jump into the structure, and I would probably use the rule of third here. Now, you don't always have to use it. However, I think it would work well here. And basically what you do is you keep 1/3 of a sky and 2/3 of a land. We can, again, use the 16:9 if we want to, or we can just use the free crop tool. So maybe just go to somewhere around here. Main reason is that there is just lots of sky where there is nothing happening, and I don't think it's necessarily there. So if we crop it a little bit away, and maybe this way as well, I would actually like to keep this there. So maybe somewhere around here. Then when we hit enter and it crops it, I think it's a much more powerful image. There is a lot happening there. I remember when I started landscape photography, my teacher used to tell me, if that part of the image doesn't add anything to the overall composition and the story, it doesn't need to be there. And that's a perfect example from where we started. Let's just reset it to where we then move, where we basically end up with much more happening on the image. So let's just adjust it again. I think we were somewhere around here and ended up with something like this, much more impact. After that, I think it actually works super well. I think it's great, lots of happening, water, sky, the overall town is really lovely. But one thing, once again, I think it's a little bit too warm. So for this, again, jumping into develop module here and just using the temperature slider on our white balance, just to bring it down to add a little bit more natural look, maybe add a little bit of tint. And actually, the Luminar Neo has a really nice tool which is called Enhance AI. And here you can use the Accent AI, which can really help you to push everything around and get the most out of your image. If you want, you can also use the Sky Enhancer, but we don't have to. And this is pretty much the result. So again, before and after, and it's a beautiful photo. So Caroline, well done. Well done for both images. However, for me, the winner this week is this one, which I think is really nicely done. Why it works. Lots of beautiful texture in the sky with the clouds, very interesting light, some shadows, some highlights, and so on. Also beautiful foreground, midground, and background. So altogether, really nicely done. Then brings us to next landscape photographer, and that's Elizabeth. Elizabeth, we have two images with absolutely stunning water. And so I'm assuming they are both from same location. So we're going to look at them now. Before we do that, I just have a quick drink and we can move on. So starting from this one, Canon camera RP, it says here, so I'm not 100% sure. However, we are on Tamron 28 to 300 millimeters. And starting here with the camera settings, ISO 400, 28 millimeters, f8, 1/125th of a second. So ISO 400 is generally higher than I would like to go, especially for landscape photography, where I really like to stick to 100 as much as I can, as long as I can. So tripod is an answer here, really to make sure that you can set your camera on a tripod and take the image. 28 millimeters, nothing wrong there. I like to stick to 24 millimeters, the widest. If I need to go wider on this type of landscape, I use panorama technique. I don't go any wider. If I use a wide lens, it's generally in a city, not on a landscape. F8 is a great number. Usually around the f7.1, f8, f9, you get the most out of your lens. So well done there. And generally on a wide view like this, f8 will give you sharpness all the way through the image, which looking at the tree and then the mountain is definitely the case here. 1/125th of a second, again, gives us beautiful light here. So altogether, Only thing I would keep an eye on is the ISO, making sure that you stick to 100. The light is quite nice here. Most of it is diffused. We get a little bit of golden color coming here, a little bit on the top of the forest. It's a beautiful, beautiful picture. You can see a little bit of the glow here, and I really like it. I think it's beautiful. Elizabeth, you should be really proud of it. The reflection, everything works nicely here. And when it brings us to the to the artistic part, to the composition. Again, I really like it. I think lots of textures on the mountains with the beautiful light, the foreground with the trees, which also help us to get a sense of scale. Works really well. The trees here, again, I mean, when a human eye look at the tree here, immediately we realize how big the mountains are. So again, that works really well. The reflection is great as well. The diffuse light is great. The sense of not movement, but the sense of flow in the image with the water and with the water hiding behind the horizon works really well. So altogether, I think this is a great capture, Elizabeth. Well done. All I would do here when it comes to photo editing, I would maybe just adjust a little bit more the white balance. Again, in Luminar Neo, that can be done in develop module, and the color section, I would just add a little bit more warmth, just a touch, and a little bit of tint. That's probably about it. I wonder in a color if we would apply a little bit of remove color cast. That usually helps as well. So this is where I would go with this image. The rest of it is great. Elizabeth, looking at the second image, same location, different view. And I have to say that I definitely prefer the first one, mostly because of the foreground, the trees being cropped and kind of tilting on one side really take away lots from this beautiful view. I understand the idea, but it's just there is so much beautiful happening behind this tree that the tree is something what human eye consider as nice, but something what you can see every day. It's really the view behind which is special, with the beautiful reflection, with the rocks, with the mountains, with the light, with it's just everything else work behind it. So even though looking at the camera settings, again, I would pick there the higher ISO, but the rest is fine. The sharpness is good, the light is good. When it comes to composition, I would probably not use image like this. And the thing is that really the attention would be always on the mountains and the scene behind. On the top of it, also some of them are a bit cropped, so I think it's a shame. And you also have a little bit of chromatic aberration happening around the trees, which also takes a little bit away. So Elizabeth, if I would have to choose between them, this one is much cleaner and much nicer. But for this one, if I would want to adjust it, I would apply similar thing. Again, a little bit of adjusting on my white balance with maybe a little bit of extra temperature and a little bit of extra tint, and maybe a little bit of auto difference to see if it would remove a little bit of it from a tree. Also, it's tilting a little bit, so I would go ahead and maybe try to kind of rotate it around to at least something like this, to at least straighten it up. But still, shame we missing a little bit of tree here. Anyway, Elizabeth, thank you so much for sending your images over. It's always a pleasure to review them for you, and I can't wait to see more images in the near future. Which brings us to some macro photography, this time from David. David, let's have a look at your pictures, starting from this one right here. So, camera, Sony 7 Mark II with the lens 28 to 70 millimeters. From the camera settings, ISO 400, 52 millimeters, f16, 1/80th of a second. So, David, it's a very, very lovely flower. Camera settings, ISO 400. It looks like it was quite bright. So this is where I'm a bit confused. Why higher ISO? Again, similarly to landscape photography, really the goal as much as you can is to stick to 100, but if it was not possible, that's fine. F16s, obviously going and trying to make sure that the main subject is all in focus, so that worked really well done there. And 1/80th of a second, depending on the light and depending on the movement, you got really nice results. So from me, I would start first by looking at the noise, and I think a little bit of the noise is visible on the flowers themselves, so that's one thing. And otherwise, no, the rest is fine. Looking at the image, the light is actually quite diffused isn't the right word, but it's even across the flower, which I think works really well here. However, I think it's a little bit strong. When I look at it, I was looking at the image uh, for a little bit earlier, and actually, when you look at it for a while, your eyes start to hurt, and that usually happens when the light is just a little bit harsh. So I think that's something what I don't know if you use a diffuser or something like that, but that's what I would be looking at. Now, talking about artistic part, I think it actually works really well. I think there's maybe a little bit of too much space at the bottom, which is not necessarily, but then again, making sure that the whole flower is there and looking for certain crop, I understand why it's there. Keep an eye on your edges to make sure that you don't go over unless that's your artistic intention. The depth works quite nicely here. Obviously, the whole flower is in focus or most of it. Then you have a little bit here, and then you have really nice, very kind of soft background, but not completely soft. And I think it works quite well. You could have probably gone a little bit softer, so some of the texture wouldn't take away the attention from the flower. But all in all, it works nicely. The contrast between the flower and background works nicely too. So all in all, quite nice effort, David. That brings us to the second image. So looking at the second image, these beautiful, I would say it's tulips, but I don't want to lie. Captured with your iPhone. Now, camera settings, we're not going to worry about because phones work just a little bit differently than cameras. So let's focus more on the picture itself. Obviously, it's a bit difficult to say what is sharp, which part is sharp. Some of these parts, yes, some not. And looking at it with the light, again, some are brighter than the other. Some really heavy contrast and heavy blacks behind it. So it's almost kind of like an effort or trying of that kind of fine art macro photography where you get these flowers on really dark backgrounds. It's more artistic picture, I would say, where you really have to use your imagination. A really strong accent on the red color contrast with the black. And all in all, it's interesting, but similar to the first photo, when you look at it for a while, you start to get your eyes really start to hurt a little bit. I know with the iPhone you can make really nice pictures, but what is one thing with the phone photography is that when you start to really edit your images and push them to some extremes, like maybe in this case, you start to introduce things like glow and softness and noise and so on. So I think maybe that's the case here. As an idea, it's great. Definitely keep trying things like this because that's the only way you can learn. However, I probably, if I would have to choose between them, I prefer this one. So since we have this image here, let's bring it into edit module and see if we can maybe edit it a little bit here. I think my first thing is I would like more attention towards the flower to take it away from the background and also the bottom. So the first thing we can do, we can work with the color tool and HSL panel. We can go into the saturation. And as I say, I would like to focus on the purples here. So we can easily go into the green color and just bring it down a little bit. And now usually the color of these kind of plants is not just green, but it's also yellow. So again, we can make it a little bit darker. We don't want to overdo it, but I think somewhere around here. On the other side, we can make the purple a little bit more saturated together with magenta. So purple and magenta to get something like this. After this, we can jump into the luminance and similarly make the background a little bit darker with the yellow and green. And I would actually leave the magenta. If anything, I would maybe bring it down a little bit too, because that will make it just a little bit more like pastel color and it will be easier to look at. To top it off, we can go back to the hue and see if we want the green to be maybe more yellow, but actually I like the background maybe be more green. So something like this. With the magenta, if we want, we can just add a little bit more purple in it. So this is what I would do with the color. After that, I would use the vignette tool. I would bring the amount down until I start to see a really strong vignette. And with Luminar Neo, you can actually choose the center of the vignette. So you click on choose subject, and then you just click wherever you want the center to be. So for me, I think something like this. After that, you can adjust the vignette, you can add a little bit more feathering to it, or make it a little rounder if you want. But for me, let's have a look at the before and after. I think that that is more than enough. Since we're looking on and working on a little bit of fantasy look for this image, what we can do, we can go into the creative tools and use the mystical tool here and add a little bit of that just to get a little bit of more glow and make it all work together even nicer. So this is it, what I would do with this image. Let's have a look at the before and after. And I think the difference is quite big. I think it actually works really nicely at the end. So what did we do? We have applied vignette to bring attention more towards the flower. Then we play around with the HSL panel to make the flowers pop out and the rest of the image to hide a little bit. And then you get something like this. So, David, thank you so much for sending your images. It was great to see it. I hope to see more images from you next time. And now, before we're going to finish, it's time for the last photographer, and that's John. John, it's a usual set of photos, pet image, and portrait photography. So let's jump straight into it. Just a quick drink. And then we can continue. Boho photo, that was a lovely lake. That was a lovely lake, actually, from Elizabeth. You're right. Beautiful, beautiful water there. So starting with the first image right here with a lovely capture of this dog. Looking at the camera and lens, it was Nikon D850 with the 70 to 200 millimeters lens. Now, from the camera settings, ISO 64, 200 millimeters, f2.8, 1/2000 of a second. ISO 64, I don't think you can go much lower than this, so spot on there. 200 millimeters, so nice shot from far, really punching in and getting this really nice natural depth. F2.8, again, really nice separation between the front dog and back dog. We can still see him a little bit, but obviously the main subject here is the dog here in the front. And 1/2000 of a second, giving us a really nice sharp frozen look of the dog running and being just really happy. So that works really well. Let's just zoom in quickly, talking about sharpness. Obviously the face is sharp all the way, which is great, including some of the ears. And then it really nicely, naturally kind of blend into the background with the softness. I think that is all great. It works really nicely and it's nicely done. I really like the movement around, how it's kind of edited. Again, adding more of a feel of the running and movement. So John, this is a great picture. The light, yes, is a little bit harsh. You can see the highlight in the eyes, but I think it works, you know. It's not because I say that the harsh light isn't great, that it's always, that is not great for the image. It's just sometimes it works, and I think in this case it works really nicely. So this is a very, very lovely picture. I love the composition. If I would have to be really picky, I wish the black wouldn't be there. I just think that it takes a little bit of attention away, simply because you have a lots of green, then you have lots of white, and then suddenly you have that kind of black piece of, I'm assuming it's a person, but it just looks like a blob of black. So if that wouldn't be there, I think the picture would be even cleaner. That would be my only thing. I understand it's not always possible, but to be picky, that's probably what I would prefer there. The technique of frozen the image, the kind of smooth blur, I think it all works really well and it's nicely done. So well done, John, there. Excellent, excellent picture. When it comes to editing, I wouldn't probably do anything. Maybe crop a little bit more of the top if I would want to kind of really push it to make it even more cinematic. So not completely like this. Let's see, 16:10, maybe something like that, to get even more attention on the dogs. And I think that's it. Yeah, I wonder if we could maybe just play around a little bit with the temperature, with a little bit more warmth, and maybe here in Luminar Neo with the mystical tool, you can add a really nice glow just to make it even more fairy tale like. So that's it. That's all I would add here. Brilliant picture. And brings us in, John, to the portrait photography and my favorite subject. I always think that this is such a great face for portrait photography with lots of character and texture. I think it's great. She does have a beautiful eyes, and I think often it works really, really well. Some of the pictures from the past when you capture her in black and white, I think that worked really well too. So really congratulations on that. I think it's great. So let's talk about it. Let's look at the camera. Nikon D3 with 85 millimeter lens, nice prime lens with one f1.4. Talking about the camera settings, ISO 400, 85 millimeters, obviously f1.4, and 1/320th of a second. To be honest, John, I'm starting to think that I can't really tell you much more about these pictures. They are just beautiful, beautifully done. It really, when I see this image, and sometimes I see your photos on Instagram, I think, maybe on Facebook, but on Instagram definitely, and I can always recognize that is you. And I think that is probably the greatest appreciation us as a photographers we can get, when somebody look at our image and they immediately recognize it's from us. That means that we have found certain style or signature, and that really is all we're working for, because we want to really find what we prefer. And I think these shots really make me think of you when I see them without even realizing they are from you. So really, congratulations. Great. Obviously, all is working here. Great. Focus on the eye, on this case, just on this side, but with the glow, I think it works really well. The light is really lovely. The highlight coming from a side, but then she's looking towards it. So I think that works great too. With a little bit of shadow, it's not too strong here, so I think that works well. With the kind of darker negative space here, again, working really well. Then with the hand and nice slide here, all together really nicely. Again, a little bit of focus on the hair with lots of soft area here. As a mixture together, really, really nicely done. As a composition, again, it's nicely done. I think it would work really nicely as a series as well, of maybe multiple images, 10, 15 images together would work really nicely, creating just a really nice story, even for magazine or something like that. Even the detail on the eye with everything there, with a little bit of light, just great, 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 great. Since we have not much we could have done here differently, let's just quickly look at some of the portrait tools here in Luminar Neo and see if we could use any of them on this image and maybe just push it even further. Let's have a look with the face AI. You can add a little bit of light to the face, but we actually don't need that. We don't need to slim the face because of the lens you use. So let's have a look at some of the options we have for eyes here. So we can add a little bit of iris flare. So if we push it, we get a little bit more details in the eyes. Let's just zoom in and see how that works. So let me show you before and after. We can make the eyes a little bit bigger if we want to, but I think we don't have to do that. We can make them a little bit whiter as well, just maybe a touch. Eye enhancer, let's have a look. What does it give us? It actually makes the eye just a little bit more dominant, which I think is quite nice. No red eye, dark circle. Let's have a look if we could remove some. It doesn't really need, so that's all good. Improve eyebrows. I was wondering if it's going to work, but generally it just works on the darker eyebrows, so we're not going to use that. Moving on the mouth, let's have a look at some of the options on the mouth here. We can add a little bit of saturation to the mouth if we want to. We can make them a little more red, but I think that would take away from the natural feeling. We can make them darker, no teeth to whiten. So maybe just a little bit of saturation here, maybe just something like this. So that's what you can do with the face AI. Let's have a look before and after. I just think that the eyes are a little bit too strong now, so let's tune them down. After that, we have the skin AI. With the skin AI, what you can do, you can make the skin a little bit softer if you want to, if you're looking for that kind of really dreamy look. However, I don't really like to use it too much, maybe just a little bit. Then we have the shine removal, which is really cool. It removes some of the shyness and makes it a little bit even altogether. It's up to you. I don't think it necessarily takes too much away if we just use it maybe to 50%. Body AI we can't use on this image because there is no body there. High key, it's not really a high key image. So altogether, there are just some few ideas of what else you could do, and maybe just an idea of how some of the portrait tools work here in Luminar Neo. John, great pictures again. Love the portrait and love the pet here. Thank you so much for sending it over to us. It's always such a pleasure to see your images. Folks, all of you who send your images, thank you so much. Don't forget that there are dates already available on the member zone, and I will post them on the Academy just as soon as we finish for the rest of the month. Unless something changes, I should be here for the next 5 weeks, every Monday from 6 p.m. UK time, where I'm going to be looking at your images. So I hope to see your images and images from other photographers from around the world. So for today, thank you very much for watching. My name was Jakub Bors, and you take care, stay safe, and I'll see you all really soon.